Over the past few weeks, there have been several big developments to come out of the U.S. Air Force's Collaborative Combat Aircraft, or CCA drone effort. Now, this program is centered around pairing advanced crewed fighters with AI-piloted drone wingmen for air-to-air and eventually complex air-to-ground combat operations as well. The U.S. Air Force officially now has two different AI-piloted drone fighters in testing. General Atomics YFQ-42, which made its first flight back in August of this year, and Anduril's YFQ-44, which took to the skies for the first time just about a week and a half ago. Now, I want to be clear that these drone fighters are not experimental like many of the AI-enabled drones that we've discussed in the past. They've been described as production representative test vehicles being put through their paces prior to actually entering production and operational service. In other words, there is a very solid chance that one or both of these drone fighters will actually be the first AI-piloted combat drones ever to reach operational service in the not-too-distant future. So, let's talk about the latest developments with the YFQ-44 and the YFQ-42, including new test article aircraft joining the testing fleet, and the announcement of a new sibling jet to one of these drone fighters that may even be able to take on the most dangerous air combat mission set the Air Force has to offer: the suppression and destruction of enemy air defenses. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is Air Power. Russia is claiming to have foiled a Ukrainian intelligence plot to steal a MiG-31, armed with a Kinzhal air-launched ballistic missile. But if that isn't quite crazy sounding enough, Russia went on to claim that this plan was to fly the stolen MiG toward Romania so it would be shot down in some sort of British-backed false flag attack. Now, Russia, of course, has presented no evidence to support these claims, but I've been staying on top of them with Ground News. Ground News is an aggregator that collects articles published by news outlets all over the world and places them all into a single easy-to-read feed that helps me not just stay on top of what's going on, but to see right through most common forms of modern media bias. Right here on Ground News, I can see that 100 news outlets have already covered this story, including at least 15 right-leaning outlets and 17 left-leaning ones. Now, left-leaning outlets were fairly reserved with their coverage of Russia's claims, running headlines like, "Russia says Ukrainian-British plot to steal jet has been foiled." Now, right-leaning outlets, on the other hand, were more likely to take those Russian claims at face value, with headlines like, "The FSB just foiled what could have been a false flag provocation for the ages." And Ground News also shows you vital information about these outlets along with the headlines, like their political bias, their factuality rating, their corporate ownership, or government affiliations. And I love the Ground News blind spot feature that shows me news stories that are getting tons of attention in one political sphere but are largely being ignored in the other. It helps me make sure I'm keeping my media intake balanced. Ground News is a big part of my research and my day-to-day news consumption, and it can be for you too. Just go to ground.news/sandboxx with 2 X's, or just follow that link in the description below to get 40% off their Vantage plan that I use every day. Again, that's ground.news/sandboxx with 2 X's to get 40% off their Vantage plan that'll help you stay on top of things. So, you guys have probably already noticed that some things are a bit different around here. I'm in a different office. I probably look a bit like death warmed over, and worst of all, I'm missing my glasses. Well, I'm about halfway into moving into my new house, but right in the midst of everything, I managed to come down with both the flu and strep throat at the same time. And let me tell you, it is a pretty miserable combination. And somehow in my fever delirium, I managed to lose my glasses in one of these boxes in one of these houses. So for this week, I'm just going to ask that you please bear with me while we run through a bit of analysis together, because the show must go on. So let's dive in. Things are moving very quickly in the drone fighter space lately, with advanced new multi-role drones like Shield AI's XBAT and Lockheed Martin's Vectis recently revealed to the public, and word of Northrop Grumman's still secret Project Lotus CCA drone bubbling to the surface thanks to some investigative work by Aviation Week. Now, these fighter drones in development join others that are already flying, like Boeing's MQ-28 Ghostbat, which is currently transitioning from testing of their Block 1 aircraft design to the more mature Block 2. Northrop Grumman's Model 437 Vanguard, which is expected to come in both crewed and uncrewed iterations, and Kratos' lower-cost XQ-58 Valkyrie, that's currently maturing into several specialized designs. But in terms of AI-piloted aircraft actually reaching combat service, it's looking increasingly like the first will either be General Atomics YFQ-42 or Anduril's YFQ-44, if not maybe both. The Air Force has been clear that their ultimate production decision for Increment 1 and further increments alike could go to one or several vendors, depending on force needs and performance of these designs. These aircraft designs were selected by the U.S. Air Force in April of 2025 for what they call Increment 1 of the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program, which has a stated focus on air-to-air combat specifically. Increment 1, that is. Increment 2 very likely will have a different focus. Now, it's also recently been confirmed that the first American fighters to carry the necessary hardware to control these drone wingmen on board will be the branch's air superiority-focused F-22 Raptors, which are already slated for a massive $11 billion upgrade meant to future-proof these highly capable but admittedly aging 5th-gen jets. And that makes a ton of sense. The F-35 may be the more technologically advanced of America's two stealth fighters, and it is even already slated to receive the necessary hardware for managing AI-piloted drones as part of its currently delayed but incredibly significant Block 4 upgrade. But these drone wingmen are designed specifically, again, for the air-to-air mission set, which not only happens to be the Raptor's bread and butter, but is also the focus of its replacement that's already making its way towards service in Boeing's F-47. Now, the F-22's upgrade program is already slated to start bridging the gap between the 5th-generation fighter technology that the Raptor literally pioneered and the 6th-generation tech developed for its replacement. And that means integrating AI-piloted drone wingmen with the Raptor fleet can allow for a great deal of troubleshooting and system maturation that can transfer directly into that new fighter. But there's another aspect of this transition to manned-unmanned teaming, or MUMT, that often goes under-discussed, despite being among its most important elements: developing the tactics and the trust necessary to leverage these drone wingmen in the fight. In some ways, we really can liken this change to how the Air Force had to develop entirely new tactics for the Raptor as it was entering service, as the way the air combat book had been written to that point naturally assumed that adversary fighters would usually know exactly where you were long before the fight began. As such, tactics and fighter designs at the time placed a large emphasis on things like maintaining as much energy as possible while maneuvering to get into position for a shot on the enemy, or to avoid being shot down yourself. But the introduction of offensive stealth, as F-22 test pilot Mike Dozier-Shower called it, meaning it was used to hunt for enemy fighters rather than to avoid them as the F-117 and B-2 had before, meant pilots needed to change the way they went about air combat, leaning into the Raptor's near invisibility on enemy fighter radar scopes, along with its advanced and integrated sensor suite to consistently achieve first shot opportunity, which is technical manual language for shooting your enemy down before they even realize that you're there. Now, the Raptor will once again lead the charge when it comes to rewriting the air combat playbook, this time combining the past 2 decades worth of developing stealth fighter doctrine with the collaborative combat aircraft approach to turning every advanced stealth fighter into a formation unto itself, and every individual pilot into a battle manager for that entire formation. And that means pairing the Raptor with General Atomics' new YFQ-42 and Anduril's YFQ-44, both of which are already conducting test flights. The YFQ-44, known internally as Fury, has been in the works since 2019, and its new pre-production prototype took to the skies for the first time on Halloween Day from a logistics airport in Victorville, California. This semi-autonomous first flight was the first step toward Anduril's stated goal of, quote, proving that it doesn't merely look like a fighter, but that it performs like one. Just what Anduril meant by semi-autonomous isn't entirely clear, but it does seem evident that even at this stage of testing, the aircraft is far from being remotely piloted. I'll quote Dr. Jason Levin, Anduril's Senior Vice President of Engineering now. All of our taxi and flight tests have been and will continue to be semi-autonomous. This is a new age of air power. There is no operator with a stick and throttle flying the aircraft behind the scenes. Our aircraft is ushering in the new paradigm with incredible technical precision. It executes a mission plan on its own, manages flight control and throttle adjustment independent of human command, and returns to land at the push of a button, all under the watchful eye of an operator on the loop, but not in it. And that on the loop but not in it is a good way of describing the way these autonomous platforms are maturing towards service. Like Lockheed Martin and Sikorsky's U-Hawk design that turns the H-60 series Black Hawk helicopter into an autonomous logistics drone. Operators give the platform simple commands via a tablet and then allow the platform's autonomy systems to work out how to execute that command. Now, this means commands are still coming from a human operator, as is required for kill decisions by DoD regulation, all while minimizing the requirements in terms of attention and cognitive load on that operator. The YFQ-44 is said to be roughly 20 feet long with a 17-foot wingspan. It's powered by a single FJ-44 turbofan engine that pumps out around 4,000 pounds of thrust, which is enough to propel the jet to just below Mach 1 while carrying an intended payload of 2 AIM-120 AMRAAM radar-guided air-to-air missiles. And that engine with this design will also allow the aircraft to perform maneuvers with loads of 9 Gs or more beneath a service ceiling of 50,000 feet, with a combat radius that's been reported as north of 700 nautical miles, which is about 805 regular miles or just shy of 1,300 kilometers for the non-peg-legged among us. Now, that subsonic speed has been a big point of contention among internet commenters in recent months, because many seem to believe that the crewed fighters these drones are meant to operate alongside spend a lot of time flying at supersonic speeds, or speeds above Mach 1, and as such, subsonic drones are too slow to support their air combat missions. But in reality, hitting the afterburner to sprint at the speed of sound is a lot less common than many realize. The F-22 Raptor is particularly well suited for sustaining supersonic speeds for greater distances than other American fighters, thanks to its ability to supercruise, or maintain speeds above Mach 1.5 without having to ignite its fuel-hungry afterburners. But as we worked out in a recent video, if an F-22 were to lean hard into that supercruising capability, effectively keeping the pedal to the proverbial metal but without firing up those afterburners, well, it would still burn through every drop of fuel on board in just over 40 minutes. And with its afterburners going at full tilt to scream across the sky at better than Mach 2, well, you're looking at more like 6.5 minutes before running out of fuel. That is to say that the high subsonic speeds permitted by both the YFQ-44 and 42 are likely to be plenty fast enough. Now, the YFQ-44 actually began under a completely different company's banner, Blue Force Technologies, when it was being developed as a Red Air fighter drone meant to simulate the air-to-air capabilities of the best-performing fighters and adversary arsenals, jets like Russia's Su-57 or China's J-20, so that it could be pitted against American fighters in training. Now, the platform matured with that goal until 2023, when Anduril purchased Blue Force Technologies and shifted the program's focus away from emulating enemy stealth fighters and toward shooting them down instead. With a single standing vertical tail, swept trapezoidal wings, and a chin-mounted intake, the YFQ-44 is well under half the size of an F-16, making it honestly pretty small even compared to other drone fighter designs that we've seen emerge over the past year or so. But that could genuinely work in its favor. A small, fairly stealthy design would still make for a very tough target to shoot down, which, based on the jet's air-to-air focus, would come in handy. Worthwhile aviation newsletter The Merge also pointed out that the YFQ-44 appears to boast landing gear designed for carrier operations, pointing toward the firm's goals of securing a similar CCA contract with the Navy. Now, the General Atomics YFQ-42 also builds on years' worth of development work. It was General Atomics, after all, that you could argue ushered in the drone age, with the remotely piloted MQ-1 Predator in 1995, followed by the larger and more capable MQ-9 Reaper in 2007, and the stealthy jet-powered MQ-20 Avenger in 2009. Their new YFQ-42's design serves as something of an offshoot of the firm's existing XQ-67A off-board sensing station aircraft that was developed for the Air Force Research Lab and began flight testing in early 2024. The XQ-67 even served as the prototype for the YFQ-42, despite the differences in its overall plane form, and served as the genesis of General Atomics' groundbreaking approach to sharing core systems across a variety of drone designs that they call their Gambit series, which we'll come back to in just a minute. In fact, it would seem that General Atomics refers to the XQ-67A internally as the Gambit 1. Now, the new YFQ-42 production representative test vehicle made its first flight just 6 months after the XQ-67 in August of 2025, and seemingly intent on not letting Anduril's drone soak up too many headlines over the past few weeks, the firm saw its second YFQ-42 begin testing just about a week and a half ago on November 3rd. Now, based on recent statements made by the Vice President of DoD Strategic Development at General Atomics, Patrick Mike Shortsleeve, the YFQ-42 is known internally as the Gambit 2. But that wasn't the only big announcement General Atomics made about AI-piloted CCA drones over the past 2 weeks. On Tuesday, they announced a new sibling aircraft that's focused on air-to-ground capabilities, the Gambit 6. And while this aircraft announcement was centered on the European market, the Gambit 6 could be the first drone fighter equipped specifically to fly the Air Force's most complex and dangerous missions, the suppression and destruction of enemy air defenses. This much was highlighted by General Atomics President David Alexander, and I'll quote him now. The modular architecture and signature-reducing internal weapons bay of Gambit 6 allows for easy integration of advanced autonomy, sensors, and weapon systems, ensuring the aircraft can adapt to a wide range of operational scenarios. In the U.S. Air Force, that suppression of enemy air defense mission is referred to as the Wild Weasel mission, and it's honestly about as close to being a Wild West gunfighter as you'll find in modern warfare. These aircraft fly straight into enemy airspace, waiting for adversary air defenses to come online and use their powerful radar arrays to target them with surface-to-air missiles. Once those arrays are broadcasting radar waves, also known as electromagnetic radiation, these fighters launch anti-radiation or radar-hunting missiles back at them, with the goal being to destroy those air defense arrays before they can destroy you. It really is a quick-draw competition of sorts that requires pilots to have a huge amount of trust in their aircraft and their equipment. But now, General Atomics claims their new Gambit 6 drone is being built to be capable of flying these incredibly dangerous missions alongside other precision strikes deep behind enemy lines. And this could be a very big deal for American and Allied air power, transferring some of the most dangerous elements of the Wild Weasel mission to drone fighters that can fly out ahead of crewed fighters and take on the risk of being targeted while other drones, or the fighter itself launches those radar-hunting missiles at those radar arrays. And while the Gambit 6 is sure to be joined by more air-to-ground oriented CCA drones in the near future, its biggest selling point may be that shared core system approach to production. According to General Atomics, those core systems, which include the aircraft chassis, landing gear, and avionics suite, represent about 70% of the overall cost of a new aircraft. Instead, General Atomics takes those core systems and simply swaps them into different drone designs, allowing you to change wing layout, low observable design elements, even engines, to field a variety of specialized aircraft for a fraction of the cost of developing them individually. And of course, that also means maintaining and repairing those core systems across the breadth of drone aircraft fleets likewise becomes cheaper to boot. We could honestly launch a weekly series just trying to stay on top of all of the developments coming out of the CCA drone effort in the United States and abroad, with new platforms, new capabilities, new breakthroughs seemingly coming at a cyclic rate. But for now, I'm just one guy. So instead, I'll be staying on top of these drone platforms as they emerge and mature. Then we will circle back to this topic the next time it just gets too exciting to ignore. And with that ends yet another edition of Air Power from Sandboxx News. I'm Alex Hollings. Make sure to swing by sandboxnews.com today and every day for all the latest in news, entertainment, and, of course, merch from all around the force. If you got anything out of today's video, make sure to click like and subscribe down below and leave me a comment so I know what I should cover next. And of course, don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandboxx News.